flowering at this time and being such a beautiful red, it stands out like a sore thumb. Stands out like a coral. Maybe can you get the leaves a little bit lower down? Beautiful little spines on those leaves. Little thorns underneath the leaves. A couple of zinnias that are still a bit red. But nothing compared to the red of the coral, and we just have just the right light on it. Erythrina is its name. Now the large coral tree is, or the normal sized coral becomes a normal tree, has flowers very similar to that. But that little dwarf doesn't get much bigger than that. So where do we go, everybody? Good to be back. Hyena tracks, amongst other things. One of the boys, one of the leopard boys, heading down to the dam. So I was going to go up to if it was a cut line. Maybe we'll just do it via the dam. Hearing all sorts of stories about things all over the place. There were lion calling last night up near Buffelshoek. There was evidently some cheetah around on Torchwood, I think. Wild dog yesterday, fantastically enough, for Brent. Down in the south, on our southern boundary. Okay, it's almost a different climate here to home. Although maybe you've also had some hot days this last week.
Yeah, very.
I've had over 40 degrees almost every day, 40 to 42 degrees, even up to 44 the one day. And still at night, still in the high 30s. In fact, each day starts off with about, by 8 o'clock in the morning, it's already 35 degrees. So it's been rather hot. Maybe just this low pressure that's come through, colder weather now. Just cooler, not colder. Just cooler. An early fall. We've already, well, I have already seen. Thank you. Already seen a lot of cosmos flowering. Now, cosmos flowering in February is rather unusual. Normally, if it's flowering in March, it's early. But for it to be flowering in February, it's jumping the gun a little bit. Thanks for the welcoming, everyone. FC telling me their welcome messages coming back, coming in. Good to be back. Oh, animals. Lots of animals. A very well spread out herd of impala. Beautiful morning light. No news of any cats at the dam last night. In Interesting, they're bulking up and stuffing their little stomachs. Mostly females, I think, in the group in front of us, but to the right where they spread out, a couple of young rams are starting to get a little bit boisterous. Their hornbuds are barely coming out, but they're already starting to bash heads and challenge each other. And a lot of this has got to do with the hierarchy they're going to develop as they grow older over the next 3 or 4 years before they become big enough to be any challenge to the adult rams. Oh, a couple of adult rams further in the background. These 3 little ones, or was it the other 3, I think? Those 3 found a little bit of a mound. They like to try and do a king of the castle type of game, where there's a little bit of higher ground, they'll try and claim it. Almost like a pitcher's mound. Andrew tells me a few questions coming in about what the future holds as far as me and WildEarth. I'm here, everybody. I'm here till we leave Juma, I think. Don't know how long that's going to be, but I just went on leave. And now I'm fresh and ready to go for another few weeks. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what transpires. Let's move down to the dam. Let's just use gravity. Sorry, children. When a vehicle moves without the engine, it makes a different noise, so it's sometimes troubling to some of the animals. There's a redback shrike still here. I suppose they'll only really be leaving around March. Male redback shrike in that marula. Morning, girls. Eating the leaves off of the devil's thorn. Actually interesting watching these impala because there's so many little pockets of activity. Beautiful male redback shrike. As with the kingfishers, probably head back to sort of more like the equator. Ah, okay. The Juma waterhole cam is down there. The impala are starting to do a little bit of a stop. Little boys running around, and they're supposed to be filling up with food. Look at them. Kindergarten, having fun. See if we can. They always seem to run behind things. So nobody saw what was happening at the dam because the camera isn't there. It was Brian and Andrew took it down for repairs. Morning, ladies. And now they go. I think I'm going to try and move because if they starting to do this now. They might just intensify. Excuse me, kids. I'm going to get around this tree so we can see them, maybe. Interesting behavior. It's almost like predator drill. Like we send our kindergarten kids through sort of earthquake or fire drill. They run around in circles. They're flashing their white tails, called flag signaling. And as they jump and they do that very particular high step, when they kick their back legs up, the adults will be actually transmitting, or emitting rather, a pheromone, a danger pheromone that wafts through the air and catches everyone's attention. I noticed the ram that lives here is just sitting in the grass, just watching everything going on. He's not even participating in anything. You notice how they flare their tails white? And there's a couple of things. First of all, it's to attract the attention of the rest of the herd, because it's a lot broader than the usual flash of white when they're just flicking their tails, when they're just feeding calmly, and they flick the tail, which is just a normal signal to transmit a message that everything is fine, you can keep your head in the grass and still feed. But when that flash of white is a little bit higher than eye level, then it draws the attention of the rest of the herd, and they can see whether there is danger or not. I think under the circumstances, being a kind of a drill and practice, nobody's taking much notice. And of course, this is the best time for a predator to strike, when that kind of distraction is taking place. And I think this is mostly little boys. A lot of them are starting to get quite serious with their sparring, even if they've only got barely an inch of horn. But those tiny little horn bows must be pretty sharp to be jabbed in the neck or the shoulder. There we go. Here they come again. Oh, nearly ran into the female. It was a young female. A lot of energy to burn. Okay, let's go to the dam. There was a leopard walking around last night, and it looked like it headed towards the dam. Teresa, morning. Teresa's in Virginia Beach. Hello, Teresa. Can we check on monkey oranges and baboon's tails? Sure can do. Ooh, there's a bit of a cool breeze coming from the south. What do we have? Hyena. More hyena. So how far, what was up with the camera?
Up to shore? Is it like down? Is what it is? There's something wrong with that.
Oh, so it's gone into somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's hope that we get it back soon enough. And the zebra was here. I didn't hear it. Unless it was going to our radio. Okay. Morning, Jan. In Philadelphia. How are you, Jan? Jan is saying that in the US, the deer carry ticks that carry Lyme disease, deer ticks. Well, I guess we would have the equivalent of deer ticks for the antelope. I mean, not I guess, we do. There are a number of different tick species. It wouldn't take me long. I'd be able to find your tick just At this time of the year, they're starting to sit on the tops of grass stalks, just waiting for the body warmth and the carbon dioxide that is being breathed out by the animals to activate. They can sit in the stalk for a year before they get brushed off onto an animal, and as soon as they pick up any movement or any changes in temperature, they start getting active. They've got interesting little claws that can grab onto an animal as it walks by. And I guess there are a host of diseases that are carried by ticks here in Africa, not only South Africa. Some that are, I suppose, of importance to us humans. One in particular, we call it the tick bite fever. There's no, as far as I know, I don't know what the scientific name for it is, but that can make you pretty sick. Feverish, bilious, nauseated, or nauseous, headaches, and of course the fever that comes with it. Not deadly, not as deadly as Lyme disease, and of course there are other animals that are affected by other parasites that are carried by ticks. I didn't bring my notes. I brought a bunch of other books from home because it seems that what I have here is has been inadequate for things like this question in particular. One book being the Capture and Care Manual that I can give a bit more information on. Dogs, domestic dogs. If you have a dog that's never been in a particular area and it gets bitten by certain ticks, it can get what we call biliary, and some dogs can actually die from biliary. Water's dropping. I can see that little island starting to form. Beautiful with the swallows and the water. No hippos, although there are hippo tracks just behind us. There must have been a hippo here during the night, perhaps. No sign of the geese or goslings. But that could be anywhere. These are all swallows that'll be returning to Europe soon. Most of them. I think there might be one or two others, but they're mostly the European swallow. I think they're now called the barn swallow. T for Tennessee. Hello, Kathy in Tennessee. Rutting season for impala is about end of April into May, towards the end of May. Getting back to ticks, you get very species-specific ticks. You get ticks that are thanks, Andrew and Brent. Yeah, those are the tracks that I was looking for now. Yeah, he's here somewhere. It's that young male leopard. So he's either down there or somewhere around the lodge, or those tracks that we saw going down past final control, coming down towards the dam. Nothing on Twin Dams Road. Let's go and have a look on Central. No alarm calls. So that could have been during the night. Could have been drinking and moved on from there. Most of the swallows, by the way, are just picking, they're hawking insects just above the water, but some of them actually every now and then just dip their beaks in for a drink. Now, ticks. Some animals don't necessarily have a tick to get very ill and die, just the natural tick load that builds up certain areas where there hasn't been fire for a long time. One of the things that can help with a tick load. And an overabundance of ticks can actually deteriorate an animal's condition considerably to the point of it becoming either weak enough to be a target for predators or weak enough that it can't maintain its health. Perhaps one of the benefits of fire in nature is to reduce that tick load. So, hippo is here, very strong. Yeah, very strong smell because the hippo has been spraying his dung. Quite a well-used midden or spray area. What he does is he backs up towards the bush, and with this sort of paddle-like tail, as the dung comes out, he flicks his tail quite fast, and of course it flings dung everywhere. And this acacia, even here, it's about 4 or 5 feet high up on these leaves. But there's a very, very strong ammonia type of smell to this because of it. I suppose it's the gut process of the hippo. His tracks are actually standing here. You can see where he backed up into the bush. But he will also walk through this. He'll rub his feet in it, and it will walk his scent through his territory on his path between the different dams. And a load of messages that are given off by all the scents. The age of the hippo, his health, his status. Central a little bit, see if we can see anything. I'm not seeing any leopard tracks here either, so I'm starting to think that maybe he didn't come this way. Elephant tracks, leopard tracks over there. Yeah, there we go. He did come this way, walked up central. Except this leopard track didn't really look like the young male that walked past. Walked past camp. And let me have a look. Nothing at all. He might have cut through. The hippo went up central. Whether he went to Portswood or not, don't know. We'll find those tracks later. Could be that the hippo walked on top of leopard, but I'm sure I would have seen odd footprint in the middle of all those hippo prints. Quite incredible that Tara found the hyena dens active. That was quite amazing, and as soon as I left, hyena dens were active. Thank you, Daisy, in Indiana, saying hello. Daisy wants to know if I ever get thorns in my feet. Yeah, all the time, Daisy. That's how they get hard. Because my heels are like an elephant's. I mean, my heels are quite thick. I suppose it's the arch of the foot that stays soft, and that's where there's certain types of thorns. There's certain thorns you just can't avoid. It doesn't matter how hard the feet are. That looks like he was walking here. And then, of course, the ball of the foot sometimes can get really... That's where the acacias can go in. There's Nyala up ahead. Nyala and a female, unfortunately quite shy. Going into that thick tambuti. Okay, bye Nyala. Leopard didn't go up central, didn't follow the hippo. I remember we used to have, I think it was in Duna that used to follow hippo from Gowrie Dam. Almost like he was stalking them, but it was more just a case of being curious. Back to thorns. There's some thorns that'll even go through the sole of a sneaker, so there are some nasty ones out here. The idea is to be quite careful, and especially this time of the year, there's certain places that I can't walk in with them seeds. Of course, the seeds being thorns, they're designed to hook teeth, whether an animal with a paw or a hoof or a clumsy human. It probably goes up onto the cut line. I want to put a leopard long. Hi everyone, Welcome back. Sorry about that. Now, somewhere in that last dip where we lost signal, that's where I lost the tracks. And no tracks up here on Buffels or Cut Line further east from that point. I suppose it's possible that Leopard turned and maybe went further west, but also possible that she just followed the drainage line. Repeat that one from Ruth. Morning, Ruth. Oh, hello, Ruth. In Michigan. What did I think of Tara's encounter with the elephant? If I saw, I didn't see it. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to get internet at home. Now that I've got a smartphone, it helps a little bit. It's impossible on my laptop because the signal is so weak that by the time it downloads even just one page, I run out of laptop battery. It's one of the most frustrating things. And it's pretty similar with the phone in that if I try and get a signal, I get a very weak cell phone signal that translates to either a GPRS, sometimes an edge signal, internet signal, but it takes forever to even just do text. So text is perhaps the only thing I can do. On messenger things. Every now and then when the wind blows right and a 3G signal comes up, I managed to be able to see things. But what I did do was on the way back here, I spent the night with some friends where there's Wi-Fi, and I saw a photograph of it on Facebook. I saw a beautiful photograph of Tara and those big ellie bull next to her. So I can't really say anything. I didn't see it, I wasn't there. I can just say quite an amazing interaction, I suppose. It's really wonderful having elephants that do come up to the vehicle in a friendly manner like that. I believe he was resting his tusks on the vehicle. Had similar things in Thornybush last year with that big bull. Also, he was hitting the front of Jigger with his tail, almost on purpose. In fact, he was standing there and whacking the hood with his tail. Lucky Tara, I suppose. Oh, there's a great heron on the other side, frogging or fishing. Water Thickney is calling. Morning, Cindy, in New Jersey. These still mornings are really, really pretty because the water doesn't not much stirs, and then there are a lot of little ripples, a lot of little what look like raindrops, but they're actually, a lot of that are insects and frogs coming up for air. Aquatic life that is still dependent on oxygen breaking the surface for a gulp of air and going back down. patience of a heron. But what makes it really pretty are the reflections that you get in some of the water holes. Cindy in New Jersey was asking if I've ever heard of an animal that's had its digestive system perforated by thorns from eating thorns. No, I haven't heard of that, Cindy. Thorns are not easily detached from the trees, and for those animals that do eat them, I suppose elephant, for example, there is enough material in the gut is big enough, I suppose. I can't say that it's never even occurred to me to think of that. The other animals, the browsers, things like impala, kudu, giraffe, are rather selective about what they're feeding on, although the giraffe do eat sometimes the tips of the branches of the sickle bush or other spiny plants, but they probably masticate the thorn itself if they do consume it. But as I say, the thorns are not easily detached from the branches, and even though they might strip all the leaves, they will leave the thorns behind, especially things like buffalo thorn and acacias. Worth look. So, Buffelshoek Dam. Very peaceful spot this morning. Been some elephant here. There's quite a lot of elephant dung. Looks like they've been at the Roundley Peak. Families of elephant tracks behind here. Franklin and family. Morning, children. Morning, Deborah in Arizona. Deborah's got a flower in Arizona called an African daisy. And I'm thinking, white with a purple center. Would be interesting to know, Deborah, what its scientific name is. Oh, let's say ellies here too. I'm thinking that it could be one of the gerberas. Being a daisy is probably cultivated and probably genetically manipulated to create a specific color. I mean, the true gerberas that we get here are orange to bright red, but you do get many other different colors of gerberas, known as the Barberton daisy, or a daisy family is a huge family of plants. So it could very well be that it is a specifically African daisy. I will have to. I'm also wondering, is it a fairly large daisy, Deborah? I have to send another mail and just confirm a few things. Up in the library. I'll have a look in a bit. Excuse me, Franklin. That way. Would also be great if you could send me a photograph of it. African daisy. The thing about flowers and the thing about names of flowers is that their common names can vary from town to town, let alone region to region or country to country. So it's hard to really sort of work on a common name. What were you going to say, Andrew? Dimorphetica. Dimorphetica means that there's different morphs, different colors. Okay, let's get up onto Biffles of Cutline and I'll have a look. Short. And a flower book. I'm not recognizing that name. But somewhat. Osteospermum. That sounds familiar. I'm sure we've got osteospermum. Blue-eyed daisy, Cape daisy, South African daisy, osteospermum. This is a yellow one. I mean, a lot of the daisies are yellow. That, by the way, let's switch off and we can just quickly look. That is one of the gerberas, this bigger picture, which is sort of one of the common cultivated daisies because they get such big flowers. There's also a beautiful red one. But down here is this little one is one of the osteospermums. So as I say, the common names are not easy to follow. And of course, when you're still speaking of the genus, there could be many, many different species of osteospermums. It doesn't tell me here. But this particular one is yellow, so obviously it's not the right one. Let's see. Another book might have different osteospermums. There are a bunch of them in this book. 332. Yellow. And 218 will be yellow. Dimorphotheca. That's more like it. It used to be an osteospermum. Here's a white one. Whitish. with a purplish center. Now if that was to be enhanced, but yes, that's Dimorphotheca. Looks like it has a little bit of a fleshy leaf. What other ones were there? Bear with me, folks. Interesting looking at different flowers, especially ones that are grown overseas. And 332. Would it be a yellow one also? And 446. Now that sounds more red. No. Pink. See, there's also, these are more pinkish daisies. Also used to be the Dimorphothecas used to be known as osteospermums. Those are sort of a more pinkish purplish color. But just while I'm here, let me see if I can just find you what I thought it was the Gerbera, which is the really beautiful Barberton daisies. Normally if I have time, I don't really use the index. What are we looking at? We want red ones, so we want somewhere in the 300 range. Yes, that's it. Which one was it? I suppose that white one with the purple center. Okay, I could sit with the flower book all morning. And of course what I like to do is, instead of going through the index, I like to page through the book. I like to try and get through the book to the family and then eventually try and find it, and then of course going through. Some of these books are color coded, so they group all the flowers in their color, their general colors, which can make it easy to find, but unfortunately that means that families or plants of the same family are split up all over the book, as opposed to a sort of uniform way of indexing the families, and then all the different genus and species you get within each family, with the different color variations on the same page. It's like bird books. There's a particular order of birds, how they appear in a bird book. So even if you go up to East Africa and you take an East African bird book, you're going to find that you've got your seabirds and shorebirds in the beginning, and it's just like a sequence of things. And when you page through books, often enough, you get to see things that you don't normally look at if you go straight through the index. There's your answer, Deborah. It is, I guess, true African daisy. But I don't think we get them here. I haven't seen them here. I've been away, so it's nice for me to drive a little bit of our boundary roads. Give me an idea of what's been moving in and out of Djuma over the last few days. Since I've missed quite a bit. that was a big snake. And big lion too. This must be where the lion were calling from. They came in from Torchwood and they've gone down Cheetah Cut Line. Big male lion. But there's a snake track moving across the... Well, that's the lion track we just saw. There, I've got to learn how to do this again. Lion tracks over here, and just to the right of it, there's a snake track going sort of diagonally. That's like a python or something. Huge. Oh, it's got some lion tracks to follow, heading down Cheetah Cut Line. Might be. Pardon? We can. Big male. Yeah, heading south. I'm going to try and get hold of Andrew and Ephraim. Close to the confluence of the Magusi River, and there is a pretty big pride of lion up in Kruger, in the northern part of Kruger, I believe, that have started taking down young elephant. But other than that, it's not common. I would say that here in the Sabi Sand, I know of one incident of a young elephant being killed by lion, and that was it was about 20 years ago, in the central part of the Sabi Sand, a place called Inyati. And I was there, and we had an abandoned calf that had something wrong with it, and we were trying to figure out what to do, and the lion kind of solved the problem for us. It was the end of a morning drive one morning. I was on the way back to the lodge, and we found a lioness and her sub-adults eating this poor child. But I think in a lot of places, Marco, what it is that the maternal care, the bonds and the care that is taken to protect the young are so strong that it's almost impossible for lion to get close to them. And unless lion are accustomed to it, and unless they've found a way to get at the calves, they don't even try. Because elephant, especially here, when elephant pick up the scent of lion, or when they see lion, they tend to chase them. Morning, Mr. Giraffe. From lion and elephants to our tallest mammal. Magnificent bull. Come this way, old man. Drive with him a little. Come out into the open. Sure can do. Once some people are asking if we can visit the hyena den. We are right here, almost at the hyena den. So we will be doing that. Morning, Squire. Donna in Canada. Hello, Donna. Donna wants to know if there are any animals that mate for life. I think there are a few, but hard to tell whether it is for life unless you follow the lives of certain individuals. There are certainly a lot of animals that are monogamous, but there's always a chance that they could lose a mate and then find a new one. Because it doesn't necessarily mean that if they lose a mate, they're not going to be able to find another one. Oh, you've got a raptor coming over. It looks like a kite. Something in his talons. It's something small in its talons. Yellow-billed kite. Kites are a little bit of a scavenging bird. They can be very bold, and you often find in places through Africa where they actually scavenge from humans, and they're even known to take food out of people's hands in some places. He's listening to us as well as everything around him. This breeze is making a little bit of noise. He's very well aware of sounds all over. But every now and then those ears turn back to see what we're going to be doing, or to listen to what we're going to be doing. My guess is he's looking for other giraffe, or he could be with other giraffe. He's taking us to the den. Level the car. I can hear a squirrel chirping. You see now, he's also focusing his sound south of us. There's a squirrel alarming some way further south. Morning, John, in New York. I can hear oxpeckers also further on. John is asking if giraffe usually travel in groups. Yes, I suppose you could say so, John. They are gregarious. You do find, especially female groups, and you find bachelor groups, males. The thing with giraffe is, being such tall animals, they don't necessarily stay together in a tight group. They might be quite far apart, and it's always difficult to really ascertain whether an animal is alone or whether it is just traveling in a loose group, and that we can only see one, whereas there actually might be more. Very often we're actually looking at a bunch of giraffe, or we're looking at one and we don't see the rest of them until they move into the open or things change. But I'm not seeing any other heads at the moment. This is where the lion crossed over this morning. So they did the entire boundary. They probably, from Buffalo's cut line to here, probably quicker than I did it this morning. And I'm not seeing any reason why squirrel would be shouting, although squirrels shout for sometimes the oddest reasons. Morning, Sarah. Over in California. Lifespan of a giraffe, Sarah, is the mid-20s. I guess they could probably get to 30. I think. What age do they mate? Not really sure. I don't know, about 4 or 5. Maybe. Males or females, I suppose, are different. Whatever he thought there was, is ignoring it. He was listening to where that squirrel was shouting. I suppose he was trying to figure out whether it was worth him being concerned about the noise or not. But his whole demeanor has changed now. You can see the ears are not focused as much as they were on a particular direction. He's back to chewing. Oxpeckers are doing what oxpeckers do. Back to feeding. Oh, Jeffrey, hi there. How's Texas today? Tonight? Last night? You're behind us. Jeffrey wants to know, how do giraffes sleep? They don't really sleep, Jeffrey. All the herbivores, especially being prey animals. I had a couple of things on the subject, but sleep for them would just be, they would just become targets. And there's another reason why they don't really sleep, not only because of the dangers that sleep poses by being unawares, but the fact is, being herbivores, they've got to be processing food all the time. They don't necessarily have to be feeding like this giraffe. He's eating a creeper at the moment. Probably one of the cucumbers, the wild cucumbers that's growing in the acacia. But being a ruminant, they can take time off from actually selecting food. Interesting, he's eating a little bit of wattle. Or he's sniffing around in the wattle. I saw a wattle in flower yesterday, full bloom. Very strange. In cold weather and sometimes at night they will tuck their legs in underneath them and they will rest their legs, but they won't really sleep. They'll still be chewing the cud, they'll still be alert, they need to be alert. They're very vulnerable when they're lying down. They're not lying down with their necks flat, they're merely tucking their legs underneath them. Very high in tannin, this wattle, which is why it doesn't really get browsed very much. Same as this beautiful silver cluster leaf ahead of us. And this is the softest leaf of all in the bush, with no thorns. It doesn't need thorns, it doesn't need that physical defensive thorns, because it already has a very, very bitter leaf, very, very high in tannin. And it can be eaten, and it does get eaten occasionally, and I guess it's sort of medicinal reasons. Same as this beautiful silver cluster leaf. Also no thorns, very high in tannin. Sternal repose, I think it's called. Little bit of a flower coming out on the monkey pod. They're going to be flowering in the next few days. I can see all the buds starting to form. Away fly. We're not really seeing much of a flower yet. Senna. Some sennas are used as a laxative. Sherry in Ohio. Sherry, morning Sherry. I forgot, what did Sherry ask? I'll think of it in a minute. Fresh elephant tracks here past the den. No, it's okay. Sherry was asking about Andre in Florida, how many offspring. Sherry was asking if giraffe vocalize distress calls. Actually, Sherry, the big difference between distress calls and alarm calls. Is this one of the active dens?
It was.
Could be, just inside now. I see there's a shoulder blade there that I haven't seen before. It must have been dug out from inside, perhaps. A scapula of a fairly large animal. That's probably a kudu or a small giraffe or something. Quite a big shoulder blade. Can't see much down the hole.
Yeah, nothing there.
Sherry, there's a difference between an alarm call and distress call. Giraffe do have a... Look at this hornbill. And this false marula. What are you eating? False marula fruit. Distress calls are something that happens when an animal is dying, and yes, I suppose giraffe, there is a bit of a distress call, but they do have grunts and sort of like sneezes as alarm calls, but they don't have a very well developed vocal cord. In fact, it's a very rudimentary vocal cord. So nothing happening here at the den this morning. We might be a little bit late. They might be in bed already. Nobody at the back here. Andre was asking how many offspring in a lifetime for giraffe. Oh gosh, I don't know. Have to hazard a guess. Andre, maybe 6 or 7. Not sure. I'm gonna go back to Ledwood Road. I'd say they probably give birth every 3 years, maybe, or more. Yeah, I'd say maybe every 3 years. Gestation is what, about 14 months, 16 months, somewhere there. I don't know, I can't remember all those number games things. 30 years ago, as a trainee guide, you had to learn all the numbers and to know them almost parrot fashion. You could sit and write a test and give all the numbers, and you know, to be honest, I don't keep numbers in my head very well. What we can do is maybe this evening we'll go and end off at the other den. My evening. Hoping that maybe we'll catch up with the giraffe. He might have gone through onto Ledwood Road. And also the elephant that was here might have also gone through there. I suppose intervals could be up to maybe about, I suppose maybe more than 3 years. See what, if anything, if any insight. Kingdom. Oh well, I'll have to go to Smithers. Doesn't know anything about intervals. I'll have to go to Smithers, the other book, the big book. Estrus cycles and intervals between births. Jody, New Mexico. Hello, Jody. How long is a giraffe's tongue? I don't know, I hear anything from 18 inches onwards. Are you meaning how long is it in total, or how long can it protrude? Because it is a somewhat prehensile tongue. Notice if we get to witness a giraffe feeding, I don't know, we might see him. He might come through here. He's a little bit thick between here and where he was, but he was kind of somewhere off to our left. And coming this way. But if we get to see giraffe, we'll try and witness how they feed. See how he is able to wrap his tongue around a branch, and he actually presses all the leaves against his palate and strips the leaves regardless of any thorns. Of course, the tongue and the palate have become hardened over time to withstand the harshest of thorns. Adaptation to adaptation. But interesting that he's just come on to Juma, because then we might be able to see him again later. If he is heading a little bit west, he might be around Treehouse Dam, somewhere around there later today. Depends on what he sees, depends on what he interacts with, or whether he is in contact with other giraffes. Or where he was going in the first place. There's a diker. I don't know if we're going to get to see it. It's hard to see. Quite far in. One of the dwarf antelope. There he goes. Quite a large adult male. The horns are almost as long as his ears. I don't think they I think 5 inches. Oh, there's an elephant.
I could hear some crashing.
There's big grey rump sticking out there. There's grey Dacre and its wife. Look, the two of them running off. But I thought we might bump into him if we weren't going to bump into the giraffes, because there were fish tracks coming past the hyena den heading this way. Morning, Mr. Pachyderm. If you're a Mr. Pachyderm. Doesn't look like a very big ellie. What's that in the background? Another elephant way at the back there. I think this might be a family group. But it's rather thick. crashing into this bush. It's going to chase elephants away. They seem to be across this drainage line, so there's probably a small herd here. And this might be one of the females. I'm going to try and get around this thicket. Teresa, I haven't forgotten about monkey oranges or baboon's tails. You know, if it wasn't for that daycare I booked, we wouldn't have found the elephant. There used to be a road, a little track that went through this little drainage line because there's an old hyena den where those elephants are. But I don't. Gee, it's been years. Too many years. We're not going to see them from this angle. Morning, Anna. Somewhere in the States, Anna wants to know if we've ever seen a Corey busted, or have I ever seen a Corey busted on drive? No, I haven't, Anna. Not here at any rate. Not on Juma. Corey bustards are very particular about their habitat type. They require very, very open grassland plains. Now there are some areas, see, we're not going to get across the drainage line here, and all we've got is a little patch of grey skin off to our left. We can maybe just sit for a bit and see where they're going to move. I can see a tail swishing, and rather thick. There's some open grassland areas just south of Arethusa where you might find Corey busted. But here on Juma itself, the biggest place we have is that area we call Quarantine, and it's not open enough. I should probably find out from the owner, Yuri, if there ever have been Corey bustards there, but I think it's a little bit too small. See, Corey bustards are the kind of like a secretary bird. They wade through those oceans of grassland finding insects and feeding insects and small reptiles, maybe small mammals. This is not really that good. We're not getting to see any part of this elephant other than the tree moving. I think it's much the same reason why we don't have cheetah visiting here very often, because we just don't have the habitat for them on Juma. Sorry, Brian, there's not much we can do. Other than maybe wait a while. Pardon? Where we were.
No, I'm saying just straight ahead of us.
I'm going to try and go through here, but this is going to make a little bit of a noise with these dead marula branches. Crunch, crunch. Oh, the little one there too. And interesting bird. Come to think of it. Very pale redback shrike. I think she's pulling branches down for her youngster as well. Two youngsters with that cow. There comes another cow coming through the bushes now. A younger cow. And two more youngsters behind her. Or is it just one? I think it's just one. Maybe two cows, three calves, different ages. Really getting stuck in the middle of that. Morning, Mrs. Ellie. Please come. Thanks, Sharon. In Austria, birth intervals 20 to 15-day Easter cycle. 20 to 22 months between births. Here she comes. Come out, Mrs. Ellie. Come and say hello to us. Good morning, madam. Morning, children. Patience, patience. We just sit quietly. But thanks, Sharon. So, if gestation is 14 odd months, then you could say that they can fall pregnant again when the calf is 6 months. And I suppose you could say at 6 months, giraffe calf is pretty independent. well, independent in terms of weaning. Anyways, on to elephants. But thanks for that, Sharon. Can always count on Sharon for important info. Little one lying down. Flat on its side. Let's see if Big Sister's gonna come and do anything. Time for a rest. A little ellie nap. That's such tiring work, being a little elephant. What is so incredible about this little experience that we're having is that I'm not necessarily keeping my voice down so they can hear every word that I'm saying, and that this little one is so comfortable in being able to nap right next to us. And then here's Sister. Hello. Hello, baby girl. So, Big Sister is probably 5 or 6, I'd say. Oh, I can't get my hat any lower. Little one, I'd say little one's probably only about 3. What did you just break, Mama? You're eating some of that zebra wood. Yeah, breaking bits of zebra wood, little young zebra wood plants. Not so young, but they... Kick it with your foot. No, break it with your trunk. Is that a sneeze?
Look like it.
You've got golden orb web all over your face, Mama Ellie, amongst other things. Diane wants to know the little one was the same one that was angry on quarantine. No, that was a tiny Ellie. This one's a 3-year-old at least. I'm not sure. I don't think it's the same. I need to look at photos. I've just taken a photograph of her left ear because she's got a very particular little notch out of her left ear, this big mama. But she's also got a few things that are quite particular about her that I'm sure I would recognize. Problem is that sometimes my memory doesn't serve me too well, and when I see elephants and then I see them again, I recognize them, but then I can't place where I've seen them or when it was that I saw them.
That other little one also had a very floppy ear.
That little one?
Yeah,
One?
that stroppy one.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Normally little boys that get stroppy get. Hello, mommy. Kathy. Morning, Kathy. Indiana. Why don't we ever see oxpeckers on elephants? I have in East Africa, Kathy, strange enough, occasionally, not very often, but I've actually never seen oxpeckers on ellies here in South Africa. They can grab on, they actually could grab on, I think possibly because there's no fur, but that doesn't make any difference because they're oxpeckers on hippo and rhino. I think it's possibly because of the trunk. I think that might be a thing. Is that maybe that ellies are able to swat them away with their trunk. I don't know. Other than that's the one thing that I can think of. I can't think of any other reason. There are ticks on elephants. They're certainly a lot larger than the ticks that oxpeckers are going to find on giraffe and things. Maybe it's just over time elephants have. It's just I don't know. I don't know. It's a good question. My guess is it's because of the trunk and because of dust bathing and just the way that they do things. They throwing sand on themselves or mud the way that they do. I guess it's not really in an oxpecker's best interest to be sitting on an elephant when there's mud being flung around. And here comes an older daughter. That she got. But there were at least 2 other elephants, I'm sure. Hello, little girl. Oh, there's your baby. Maybe, baby. I wanted to see her right ear. She had a very distinctive tear out of her right ear. Got a little hole in her left ear. Hello, child. You're a little boy, I think. You're the only little boy in this family. I love you. I love you. The Bettelair. Never mind the Bettelair. Oh, actually, Bettelair's coming straight our way. We're close to the Bettelair's nest. Shimungwe. Too high. Oh, now he's above us. Hello, Batalia. Come to see what we're doing. What an incredible way to start back at Juma. Just sitting quietly with ellies. You know, sometimes you just don't need to talk, just to be in their presence, just sitting quietly, and they're just so relaxed around us that they've chosen to just move past us like this. Try and get back to the road without too much noise. Follow them a little bit more. I'm just going to take my jersey off. Starting to get a bit warm. Morning, Sarah again, California. How are you, Sarah? Do baby elephant graze from when they're born, or do they nurse for a while? Pretty much exclusive nursing. There's some bushman's tail, baboon's tail, bushman's candle, zero fighter, but none of them have got flowers, Teresa. And some very small monkey orange plants, but they don't have fruits. We need to find one of those areas that are quite dense with either baboon's tail or monkey orange, or both. Hello. Hello. Giving us a once over with his trunk. She's very young if that is her calf. But I can't imagine it. The older cow's calf, I can only see maybe 3 of hers, or 3 of them being hers, maybe including this one being her first calf. But she has been lactating, as small as she is. But very much like us, elephants, you get big individuals and small individuals. Like us, you get jockeys and baseball players, or rather basketball players, and everything in between. Those two are almost the same age. My guess is the little one's nursing. The way it's, yeah, it looks like it was. The way it was standing next to Mom. Here we go, again. Could be that she's lactating because she's going to have another calf soon. Or she's pregnant. She's still maybe a little bit away from having another one. This one is only about 3. The most. Strange that it's suckling. Might not even be milk there. Who knows? Jen wants to know if they can kick with their back legs like a horse can. Well, not exactly like a horse, Jen. I mean, a horse would sort of... If I can think of how zebra do it, and I've seen horses where they kick back with both of their legs. I wouldn't say like a horse can, but they can kick back with their back legs. But not... They can kick forward and back.
It's more
And
of a
they...
roundhouse kick.
Yeah. But it's more of a... And they're very tactile with their back legs. And in fact, if we get around, now that Mom's moved off, we can see when the calf is around, and it's and their rear vision, elephants' rear vision isn't that great. So quite often, instead of turning their whole body so that they can see behind them, when the calf, because the calf invariably is towards the back of Mom, much as this one is now. Well, now it's moving up to go and suckle again. I don't even know if it's getting milk. It might just, as I say, it might just be suckling. But when, like now, this exact moment, a calf stands behind Mom. Often you'll see an elephant will use the tail or the back leg to feel where the calf is, so that if they wanted to back up, if they wanted to walk backwards, they wouldn't step on them. But also just to know where they are. They're very tactile creatures, beings, and body contact is very important for calves, and Mom's reassuring them often by just stretching back with the back legs. But then again, I've also seen where water has been scarce, and they dig holes for water, some places in East Africa, and the water hole can only fit one elephant at a time. I mean, it's literally a water hole. It's a hole in some very thick clay. It gets quite deep over the decades, if not centuries, that elephants have been digging. And quite often the calves try and squeeze their way in to get some water, because invariably they're thirsty. And come, little girl, protecting your mama. And very often, because the matriarch is the most important elephant in the entire herd, she will invariably drink first. That's important for her survival, because without her the rest of the herd will die. So it's very important that she's the one that gets nourishment and things first. And very often the children become very impatient, and you'll find that if she hasn't reprimanded them with a trunk and a tusk, that she will lash back at them with the back legs. I've seen that happen. But it's not the kind of a kick that a zebra or a horse can do. The back of an elephant. In hindsight, that one youngster further in just sort of came back. I think maybe it smelt something or saw something. Let me go forward a little now that Mom's moving. coming back to the matriarch, that youngster. I don't know whether it heard something or smelled something on the wind. I'm not smelling anything other than the herbs and forbs that are being squashed by their feet. There's a lot of vernonia here, and they're squashing a lot of that very sweet scent of the vernonia. They seem to be calm now. Look, little one. Oh, that was quite cute. Little one had its trunk in mom's mouth, and what happens there is actually when mom's feeding, little one either takes food from mom's mouth, or it actually smells the food that mom is masticating. Get an idea of what constitutes food for a young elephant. It's got to learn so many things. Very many, almost every aspect of an elephant's life is a learned thing. There's not very much instinct, and it's very important that in their travels they not only learn the areas that the matriarch will take them, but also what foods to be fed on in those different areas, what can be found there, and what parts of the trees need to be utilized, because sometimes you need to eat the leaves, and sometimes you need to eat the branches, and sometimes you need to eat the roots or the fruits. Elephants. Asheville. Mickey from Asheville. Mickey or Nikki? Asheville or Nashville? Mickey, Nikki, and Asheville, Nashville. Do elephants ever give birth to twins? Oh, Mickey. Oh, Mickey, you're so fine. Here's a monkey orange right next to me, but there are no fruits on it. A lot of monkey orange here. Hella nice monkey orange. Monkey orange. Yes, they do, Mickey. They have been known to give birth to twins. Not very common, but it has been recorded. I'm thinking, don't know. I mean, there are two calves here the same age, although it looks like the smaller cow is maybe the mother of the one calf, because they are together the way they are. But that doesn't really mean much. The proximity of individuals, except there's a little boy and a little girl. Of course, that doesn't mean they can't be twins, because you can get boy and girl. But I think this young cow is bigger than the little boy. I think the little boy belongs to the smaller cow, and then the little girl is the older daughter of the matriarch. And the deeper they go in, the more I'm going to let them just move off into the bush. I want them to know that I'm just going to turn around and go the other way, and that it was a really pleasant experience, us meeting like this, and that they remember us for the pleasant experience they had, that there was no stress. Bye, Mrs. Ellie. Thank you for your time. You can thank me for mine. Morning, Charlie. I think that could be Charlie in Cleveland, Ohio. Charlie wants to know if I'd ever recognized the elephant that left a few holes in the Land Rover. Oh yes, I think I would, Charlie. I would. There's certain aspects of her that I would remember. The shape of her tusks, I remember those easily enough. I will also remember the shape of them, believe it or not, only because they were strange, only because her memories had very particular shaped memories. Boobs. Of course, it would be very difficult if all I could see was her forehead. Oops. Bye, Ellies. Thank you. Loves you. If I just saw her forehead and maybe the tops of her ears, I don't think I'd recognize her. I'd have to have her standing out in the fairly open to recognize her that well enough. I would imagine that if I saw her out in the open, she'd probably be aiming for the vehicle again, if she's still inclined to do that. It could be that since she's punched a couple of holes in the vehicle already, she's got that little thing out of her, that little bit of aggression, that need to do something to a vehicle. Maybe she's got it out of her system by now. That was wonderful. Oh, hello, Elizabeth in Minnesota. That's quite an interesting question from Elizabeth up there in the Midwest. Have I ever seen a forest elephant? Answer to that is no. Then Elizabeth was asking, how do they differ from African elephants or Asian elephants? Well, they're actually a type of African elephant. The forest elephants live in West Africa, Central Africa, up in the dense jungles, not real jungle, dense forests of Central, North, and West Africa, Gabon. They're a lot smaller. They are believed to actually be a different species, not a subspecies of the African elephant, but actually a different species of an African elephant. There is another, of course, down in the Cape we have Hyenas elephants that were also supposedly a different subspecies. The one main thing about the forest elephants, not only that they're smaller in body size, but their tusks don't sort of flare out the way the savanna elephants do. Because they live in such dense bush, the tusks coming out perpendicular to their face would be a hindrance. So their tusks grow straight, virtually straight down alongside. If their trunk was just hanging relaxed, their tusks would grow down straight down along parallel to the trunk. different to Asian elephants, of course, because they're completely different animals. So the African elephant and the Asian elephant, different in body size, different in the arch of the back. You find that the African elephant has got a concave back. The Asian elephant, the back arched. The head is different. Of course, the ears, the African elephant, much bigger ears. They say that the African elephant, the ears shaped like Africa, and the Asian elephant, the ears shaped like India. So they say. But I've never seen a forest that I've never been to that part of Africa. And in East Africa, on the other side, on the eastern coast, where you might get forest elephants on the west coast, on the east coast of Africa, you get the same elephants we get. The Mulwati River. Let's see what Twin Dams has to offer. Welcome back. Very empty Twin Dams. The hippo tracks are here. It must have come to Twin Dams. There's the bulldogs doing circles. I'd say it's pretty good flying weather today for... we're going to get him. It's going further down Twin Dams Road. This is this pale Wahlbergs that we see a lot along Twin Dams towards Gowrie Dam, along this whole line. See, the temperatures haven't risen that much yet, so buffalo are starting to make their way to the dam, in either of the dams. Please be patient, we had a problem. Technical issues. Please be a problem, we have a patient. Oh, nice to catch up with some buffalo. As I said earlier, it's not that hot that they're making their way to wallows and to the water yet. It's starting to warm up fairly fast. All caked in mud from yesterday's wallowing, no doubt. Suzanne in the Netherlands. I think I know this Suzanne. It's a question about elephants, but it actually the same thing could apply to buffalo and to a lot of things. Suzanne was asking, due to the I suppose the poaching or the hunting of elephants in the past, the big tuskers, has that affected the gene pool, and why we don't get any big tuskers anymore? To a very large extent, that is what it is. There are still a few elephant that carry the gene for big tusks if they're allowed to reach that wonderful old age. I mean, we had the magnificent bull, the Ciolo in Tembe. There's still some big tuskers in Tembe. There are a couple of big tuskers up in Timbavati that occasionally come down here, but they tend to move from the Timbavati up into the Olifants Valley, and from there into Kruger. And quite clearly there are still elephants with the gene for large tusks, and it's a matter of time before we get to see some of them. But generally speaking, elephants with large tusks have been the gene pool has been damaged quite severely because of humans' greed and humans' need for larger and larger tusks. I mean, we're talking about 200 years ago when these animals were hunted extensively for their tusks. Now buffalo too, I mean, the spread of the horns of a buffalo, if we look at these buffalo that we're with now, and they to us they're big buffalo, but in terms of this overall size and the possibility of the size of African buffalo, they're nowhere near the big bulls of the past. And you look at this boy, he's maybe 2 feet, 3 feet across, maybe a meter, I'd say. What do you think, Brian? From outside, from one side to the other, that other boy on the left, he's maybe a little bit wider, but if I think of some of the buffalo of years gone by, a decade or centuries ago, turn of last century into the 19th century, those buffalo would have been 1.5 meters, maybe even bigger. And so it is with many antelope. I mean, kudu even to a large extent, because kudu were hunted so extensively. Even kudu, the gene pool, the size, the overall size, the trophy size has been getting smaller and smaller as decades wear on. When you look at things like sable antelope, sable that were hunted so extensively, to the point where nowadays if genetic manipulation didn't take place, the average size of a big bull, the biggest bull's horns wouldn't be as big as some of the biggest females of days gone by. And it's only now through crossbreeding and actual genetics that they're able to bring back some of the big sable, because it's become big business. But that, I suppose you could say, thanks to the likes of Roland Ward and the trophy book, the Roland Ward trophy book, and the quest of hunters to try and get bigger and bigger trophies. And of course, it's getting scarcer and scarcer for them to find big trophies, that all the big ones have been taken out. It's a very good argument for how bad hunting can be for the gene pool. When you get so many hunters that say, oh, they're the best conservationists and they do the right thing. They don't. They go for the biggest breeding bulls, and they leave the smaller bulls to breed in their place. It's not true that the hunters go for the old senile bulls that no longer are reproductive. Or even if they do, even if they are active, they still maintain a presence within the society that still suppresses the younger bulls. So overall, yes, hunting, our sick need to shoot things as human beings. If we were out hunting with spears and we needed to drag it back to the cave to feed our family, is a different story. But to pay thousands, if not sometimes tens of thousands of dollars to shoot the biggest animal there is to shoot, that's just seriously messing with natural selection. We then become the selectors in, and it's no longer natural selection, it's human selection. There are places in Africa, up in East Africa, for example, where poaching was so bad over decades. I'm talking elephants now. That some of the only elephants that were left to breed were tuskless elephants. To the extent that tusklessness, instead of being a recessive gene and instead of being a throwback to, or sort of the bottom end of the gene pool, suddenly became a dominant gene, and suddenly there are a lot more elephants that are tuskless because they were the ones that weren't shot, so they were the ones that grew to breed. Now, Asian elephants, of course, the females don't have tusks, only the bulls do. So somewhere along the line, the need for tusks in African elephants drove elephants to develop better and bigger tusks. And most of it has got to do with, especially for the females, got to do with the feeding and the digging and taking bark from trees. And if you just keep shooting elephants with tusks, then the ones that are left are going to be the tuskless ones. Okay, Buffalo, we shall leave you to your own thing now. Bye-bye, Buffalo. Have a nice day. There's 4 of them. See, there's a... No, that's not a buffalo. The same size as a buffalo. That's another elephant. A little elephant. Little elephant. 2 little elephants. We won't say goodbye to the buffalo just yet. Where are you off to, Mr. Buffalo? You're going up to that wallow, but there's elephant in your way. Hey, Mr. B. This is another family now. One on our right. 2 little calves on our left, and there's a mom behind the tree. Very similar composition to what we were seeing earlier. Cheeky little boy. Fairly young cow. Almost the same ages as that other family group that we saw. Little calf of about 2.5, maybe 3. Older calf. Except the older calf here is a little boy. And this youngster is maybe a little bit younger than the other one. I'm going to try and move a bit forward. Young female. Still not seeing matriarch. She's too young to be matriarch. But she is a mother. She's possibly mom of this one. Whereas the other cow had 2 little girls, this cow's going to look like she's got 2 little boys in tow, and another little female, sort of early teens to our right. quite a pretty cow actually. Got a very neat face. And there's Big Mama with a young calf. That's the big cow. That's the matriarch. Hi Tammy. Thanks for the mail, Tammy. She's also a lovely old girl, that. She's much bigger than the matriarch we saw this morning. And a tiny little one. That little one's only about a year. Unfortunately we can't see them, but the two cows, it's like they were greeting behind the quarry. Sounds like a story title. The greeting behind the quarry. Question from Andrew in Final Control in South Africa at Tuma Game Reserve. Comments on Lawrence Anthony and the work that he did with elephants. Some of you might have read the book The Elephant Whisperer and might be familiar with his story. Quite a touching story about how he saved a herd of elephants. Interesting thing is that Lawrence Anthony had no elephant experience prior to his whole story, prior to his acquisition of elephants. I'm sure he probably had experienced elephants in Kruger, and he had maybe been to other parks, but he had his own reserve, and when you have your own reserve like that, it's not always easy to go and visit other areas. So I'd say the bulk of his elephant experience came from his acquisition of that small herd of elephants, and completely different circumstances to what we experience here in Kruger. And these are wild elephants. These are elephants that are, I'm just trying to position so we can see that other calf coming from behind, because it's there with the buffalo. That other calf coming from behind, because it's there with the buffalo. Maybe not. No, I admire him. I mean, it's not only the work he did with elephants, but of course what he did with rhino as well. But he had his experiences with that particular herd that he had on his property, and I suppose gaining incredible knowledge about elephants, being able to be so close to a herd and having a herd that are so emotionally connected to him, or were rather, it must have been something quite amazing. But some of the things that some of the things he wrote in his book, he appeared a little naive in terms of overall elephant behavior and overall elephant society, because he wasn't experiencing it on a much larger scale. He didn't have the interaction of different family groups, of bachelors and big bulls. But still, his heart was in the right place, and I'm sure that the elephants must have felt that. What are you doing, little girl? Oh, not a little boy. Here we've got a situation. I thought it was a young cow, but now that it's coming into the open, the one that's left behind us, by the way, is a little boy, probably just approaching puberty. We'll see him shortly. I'm sure he'll come out. But I'm also going to turn around so we can spend some time with him. He's possibly going to interact with these buffalo in some way. He's still with the herd. He still belongs to the family group because he hasn't been through puberty yet. He's not old enough to join up with bachelor herds, with the male groups, because male society is different to female society in elephants, although they're all elephants. The bulls have a different way of doing things. And for the first 12, 14 years of the little boy's life, all he knows is the family life. And from a very young age, he starts keeping a little bit of distance, as he is here. Maybe 20, 30 yards away, maybe a bit more. But he's obviously still in touch with them. I mean, he can hear them, he can talk to them, and he's going to follow them. He's close enough to Mom that if there's anything untoward, he can run towards them, he can get back to her. And if anything were to happen to him, Matriarch would come running too. But over the next few years, as he's going to go through puberty, I'm guessing he's maybe only about under 10. He's not more than 10. I don't want to get between him and the herd, but also don't want to push him. I don't want to make him move if he doesn't want to. But it's interesting in that he's going to probably come past the front of us, and there are some buffalo that are making their way, those boys that we saw earlier. And they look like they want to head up to the wallow up there on Chelapan Road, that big mud wallow. And they're just waiting for the elephants to move on. Because so many people have asked me about elephants being kicked out of the herd. In fact, there are a number of things where the misconception is that animals are actually kicked out of the herd, much like these big Dogo boys. They aren't kicked out of the herd. They just choose not to follow the big herds. They just choose to stick around here while there's mud wallows and grazing, and they'll catch up with the herd when the herd comes by again in a few months' time, and they can socialize and do what they need to do. But with elephants, watch now. This is what he's going to display, I think. He might. He's trying to. He was sort of flaring his ears. The buffalo not taking any notice. No, you don't want that, Lily. No, you are going to eat a leaf. Just a little bit of I wouldn't say it wasn't quite a confrontation. But he kept his no, he's just thrown his head. I didn't see that because it was behind a tree. But he, being well past the buffalo, he decided that he was going to chance it, and he turned and threw his head at the buffalo, sort of a sign to say, I suppose it's a gesture, really. Hello, boys. Buffalo boys. When a family group like this comes across bulls, none of the females in estrus, they probably socialize with bulls, and it's in those meetings that the older bulls will make contact with a young bull like this, and eventually what will happen is that one day the young bull like this will then just move on and just join up with those very same bulls that socialize and associate with his mother and aunties, and invariably you'll find that they all have similar ancestry, they all have familial connections somehow. Elephant male society is it's not a collection of bulls that don't know each other or haven't known each other. I suppose remotely you might get that, but generally it's going to be bulls that have had contact. They might even be brothers, they might be cousins, but they've had contact from a very, very young age, since they were kids playing together around their mother's feet. And as big older bulls, they still maintain those bonds, those friendships, those connections. It looks like a happy child. Still learning how to feed with its trunk. He's already got a little bit of a nick out of the top of his left ear. And just finally, Lisa wants to know if ellies behave any differently in cloudy or rainy weather. I don't think you could generally make an answer or give an answer to that, Lisa, because I think it depends on the individual and it depends on the day. I think on some days they will and on some days they won't. That's something that we can talk about further this afternoon. This has been WildEarth here at Djuma Game Reserve. It's been wonderful being back. It's even been more wonderful spending the morning with you and with the ellies. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Brian, for the camera work. And thanks, Andrew. And Brent back in final control. We'll be seeing you this afternoon, of course. We'll be coming back at around 4 o'clock Central African time. Well, on our clocks at 4 o'clock, 1600 hours. And we will see you then. And hopefully we can catch up with some more ellies and we can look into the whole weather phenomena and how that does affect animal behavior. So my name is Mark. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here, goodbye. Love you lots. Thanks, everybody.